Hey, how are we doing today, guys? I'm Evan Kahn.
And I'm Ryan Clarkson.
And this is the TC Talks podcast.
Podcast where we talk to TC and TC talks back.
How are we doing today?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. We have our wonderful guest with us today, Mr. Meadows. How are we doing?
Good, guys. How are you?
Good.
Good.
It's a pleasure to have you on here. So
Happy to be here.
I think what we're going to start with today is kind of what got you involved in music to begin with.
You know, I've just from an early age, just kind of always been attracted to music, whether it be singing, making music, beating on things. You know, as a kid, you know, all of my toys took a beating when I was a young man, just from playing hard. But just, you know, kind of always just was that kid was always walking around the house banging on stuff, and
right.
That's just always kind of been where I gravitated towards.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So, in that similar sense, what specifically drove you to be a music teacher?
So this is actually kind of one of my stories. You know, I've shared this with bands before. You've probably heard at some point or juncture. I was really blessed through my educational experiences to have very caring directors that created an experience that I wanted to be around, and that also then I kind of wanted to aspire to be like. My high school band director is Ron Geisinger. He's actually a Tiffin native. The fun thing, I grew up in Bucyrus, Ohio, and he lived in Tiffin at the time and commuted back and forth. And way back in the day, Tiffin and Bucyrus were in the same league, and so we would always see Tiffin's band for football games and things like that. And Mr. Geisinger specifically just had a way with people. There's people connected with him. He created a very positive learning experience. And really, you know, to this day is kind of what I try to recreate through my experience with my kids in my classroom. Yeah. I've always said that no one wants to be bored. No one wants to be in a situation where they don't feel like they're wanted. Right. And he always had a way of creating an environment where everybody felt wanted. They felt like they were part of something. And that's kind of what I've tried to you know, do and be around and create.
So I know, especially through the COVID years, my sophomore and almost into my junior year, or sophomore junior year, it was a little hard. We were in the auditorium, and
online playing tests on was it Flipgrid?
It was Flipgrid, that
those were something.
I never turned in. I'm just gonna be honest here.
I know, I know. You know, I mean, you know, really, you know, COVID has kind of become, you know, kind of a bad word, you know. I mean, if you look in the Urban Dictionary, you know, we don't associate anything good with that. No. You know, and really, just life in general was kind of survive and advance, and, you know, music in that same way, because music was not meant to be a separated thing. I mean, you know, it's cool that we can create things through Flipgrid and share things, but, you know, I put together a digital concert for our seniors, you know, when we got sent home that year, you know, that we came back and we were remote and we were in school, and then we're doing asynchronous learning, and we learned a lot from it, you know, and there were some things that the positives came from it, but what we did learn is how much of an in-person experience music really is. Yeah. You know, not being able to make live music, not being able to do concerts. You know, we remember the virtual concert that we created, and then YouTube yanked half our music out. I mean, just things you wouldn't think about, but so... I get it.
Yeah, I think that kind of, you know, in the auditorium and stuff, I think that was probably like the best possible outcome, though. Is like, even though we had our mandated, like, it was like, 30 minutes of exposure with playing instruments and like all that, I think that was our best possible outcome, because we were, you know, able to use resources like the auditorium, the gymnasium, and play outside that other schools, like, they either, you know, don't have an auditorium or don't have access to it because they have like a drama club in there or something like that. I think that we were fortunate enough to have those opportunities for us.
I mean, I know of colleagues that didn't get to make music, whether it be because they didn't have a space or just their school said, we aren't going to do this, we aren't going to endanger people. I mean, you know, like you said, Rylan, it was kind of the best of the worst of a scenario, you know, and thankfully we were able to do things, we were able to, you know, keep pushing ahead, and thankfully, you know, the fallout in terms of interest and participation wasn't too bad, you know, from what we've seen other people deal with and stuff. And, you know, looking at, you know, what we have coming up and some of the upcoming grades that have, you know, now had a year of, you know, normalcy, if you will, you know, I'm excited to kind of, you know, with Mr. Thacker, build things back up and get things, you know, back in the direction of the standard that we're used to.
Yeah. Back to a normal age for the rest of
What is normal, right?
right. Anymore.
Yeah.
So being a teacher, you've been doing band directing here at Columbia and other places for a long time. What would you say would be like almost the hardest thing about being a teacher or director?
I mean, the biggest thing, I guess if we're talking about music itself, the time it takes to do it, if you're a person that wants to punch the clock at 7:30 or not 7:10, I guess now with our new bus schedule.
Yeah.
You want to punch the clock right when you're supposed to be here, and if you think you're going to leave, right when you're allowed to leave and you're going to have a successful program, you're mistaken.
Yeah.
And that's probably the hardest thing that's been to adapt to. For many years I didn't have a family, I didn't have kids, and it was easier to deal with that. I mean, it's still tiring and this and that, but when we add, a family and children onto that, and then trying to be dad, but then also trying to be, the band director who's engaged with the students and provide those opportunities, it's a lot, and there's definitely a balancing act with it, and you always kind of feel like I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul in some sense. If I'm here with the band, my family's suffering, and then if I'm with my family, then something's missing out there. So like all things in life, it's a real balancing act.
Right.
And you adapt as you go, and you try and make the best of it. So that's definitely probably the hardest thing, other than dealing with stupid COVID that we don't. That was by far. Well, it's funny because Mr. Kenny and I were just right before COVID. It wasn't our fault, by the way, but we're just talking about how, we've been working together for a long time, and when you work with someone, the camaraderie and then the just kind of the well-oiled machine things become. And I don't want to say that we were taking for granted that things were just working, but everything was just kind of working and in its place. And then just when we got comfortable, boom, COVID hit and blew everything up. And, so it's not our fault. We didn't do it. But, just when you think you got it figured out, it's the things like that happen.
Yeah.
So
there's that, like, for me, I want to become a band director. And, like, one of those just, like, I don't want to say a turn off, but, like, just a thing I just have to accept is just the time. Like even just helping you and like Mr. Kenny or Mr. Thacker out with stuff, like even just organizing the music library, that just takes so long. And that's just one small thing that's like just like a secretarial thing. That's not even like something you do often. That's just like one thing that takes so long. Or hunting down a bunch of different, mutes for trumpets. Like that's not like a crazy like intense thing, but it's like it's a lot of time and dedication that you have to put into a job. Unlike, being like a teacher, like, with English or math, you probably come in like half an hour early, turn the lights on your classroom, you plug your computer in, and you go. And then you go home and grade papers. And there's a lot of extra stuff that you have to do, not only with like just music-wise, but you have to do, transportation and booster stuff and all this other things that you have to dedicate your time towards. And it's a lot of work.
And it's a reflection. I mean, just education in general. It's not a 9-to-5 job. It's not. Yeah. You're always carrying something with you one way or another. Whether it's the typical classroom teacher grading papers or things like that. But really, it's just kind of life in general. And you guys are both on the cusp of your next steps. And, we find out really soon, and hopefully sooner rather than later, that if you're going to do something, you want to be good at it, and you stop asking yourself what or how much it's going to take, and just put your focus on what do I need to do to be successful. And if your focus is more on the process as opposed to the amount of time you take, to a certain degree, as long as it's not unhealthy, more often than not, you're going to find yourself in a successful situation with a successful outcome. And that's education in general. That's just, and especially with this dealing with people. I mean, you know as well as anybody that you can tell when a teacher's into what they're doing, and when a teacher is just there trying to get you out the door to the next class.
Right.
And like sharks, I mean, they can tell when blood's in the water. So as teachers, you need to be on your game, and that's part of the, while it's tiring, it's part of the job. It's part of what you signed up for, and you got to do what you got to do.
For sure. Yeah.
So kind of speaking of having balancing acts, like I mentioned earlier or off camera, you're also the track coach for shot put and discus.
Yep.
Now, did you do that? Did you do shot put in high school? Or
I did. So I'm a band director. That's what I do for a living, and we all know that there's a lot of stereotyping goes in with if you do one thing, that's all you do. Well, I was a kid growing up. I mean, yeah, I was into music, but I was also the kid that was always out in the yard playing sports. I was involved. I played football, I played baseball, I wrestled, I ran track. I was involved in theater. I sang. I mean, I was, I guess now I look at that person, the jack of all trades, but king of none.
Yeah.
But what I really truly believe that, what high school is about, what elementary, what middle school is about, finding yourself and finding those things, and we don't have to be just a musician or just an athlete or just an academically minded or just an artist, allowing people to have those experiences so they can figure out what they enjoy and what they don't enjoy.
Right.
I did enjoy athletics, and it was always a nice contrast to the cerebral part that was involved with music. I did track in middle school. I did track in high school. Towards my junior year and senior year, I did a lot of growing. Yeah. I was never really a small kid. I mean, I was actually a chubby kid when I was really young. And, but then as I started maturing in high school, all of a sudden I was over 6 foot, and then I was around 200 pounds, and that was a little more conducive to the throwing side. It was actually funny because I used to pole vault when I was like early high school, and then I was actually a sprinter. I actually ran distance in middle school.
Really?
I was horrible at it. But, and then with the pole vault thing, once I had to start using what they called the telephone pole to get over basically a bar that wouldn't bend, my coach was like, maybe you should just be a thrower full time. So I got involved with that. Between my junior and senior year, I went to a couple of camps and did some things, and had moderate success. I mean, by no means a state qualifier or anything like that, but I really enjoyed the sport.
Right.
When I got my first teaching job, an opportunity came up to coach, and they needed a throwing coach, and I knew a little bit about it. So I started doing it, and I found that was a really nice, I don't want to say kind of release, but counterbalance to the normal 9-to-5 job. I was able to be in band, be immersed with that, and then there was the athletic side that I really enjoyed as well.
Right.
And minus a few years after my oldest was born, when I took off from coaching, I've done it pretty much, let's think, every year minus 3 years, and it's been good and enjoyable. So
you get that almost best of both worlds. You get to be the musician and you get to be the athlete.
Well, and I think it's important, when we're talking to these, kids coming in the middle school band and they're making their choices, showing that you can do more than one thing. You can be a musician and like I said, an athlete or an artist, or you just don't have to be pegged into one thing. And especially now with there's so much pressure on students. If you're going to be an athlete, you're going to play basketball all year long. And it's the only way you're going to get better, or football player. Or even for track athletes, there are people that if you want to be really good at it, you do have to dedicate yourself to it. But there's still room to do more than one thing. Right. And so I hope that when we talk about those things, I hope people really listen and take, hopefully take it to heart and, don't deprive themselves of those good experiences. So. Right.
Because for me personally, in my lifetime, I've played in 3 different baseball leagues, almost 4. I played in the travel ball league. I played for the city, and I played for Columbia. But I still did band. I still did choir. But just because you're like an athlete doesn't mean you can't be a musician, and just because you're a musician doesn't mean you can't be an athlete.
I mean, just the worst thing in general is just broad brushing people. Because you do this, you're that. And that's and I really hope that when people come through our program, and hopefully when they just see other people, here in our school, that we don't just fall into that social norm of just trying to stereotype everyone, and just saying just because you do this that makes you like that, because that couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one thing we were kind of discussing with the Ridges was you can be in band and do other things, and not only just like choir and theater like we talked about, but we have football players in band, we have track athletes, we have baseball players. We have art students. We have people of all other different hobbies and interests in the band, and are all still able to, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2, play at every football game and do all the other activities.
Well, it's kind of when we do the freshman orientation assembly every year. One of our pre-school performances. It's kind of a flex, but always a flex. When we say that we're the largest student organization in different Columbia and different schools, we really are. And it really truly is a melting pot. Of different interests and activities and things like that. And I take a lot of pride in that, and I think that that's important, and it also helps that, when it comes to these athletic coaches and things, that they're willing to cooperate with us. And people
cool.
aren't just saying you're just going to be a tennis player and tennis only and baseball and football. I mean, we're thankful that, Coach Lutz, is very, very, very helpful with us and very accommodating, in terms of allowing kids to do things. And that goes up and down the entire board, with all the coaches. So, and that's not the norm for everywhere.
Nope.
And we're definitely very lucky to have that here. So props to them as well. Yep.
So, what is something you didn't expect about being a music teacher? Like, what would you call in your years like a curveball that kind of came to you?
That's a tough one. I mean, there's never really a big curveball. It's just things pop up, things you never think you would have to deal with. Like, man. Like, I guess like band trips.
Yeah.
Like I took them when I was a kid, and we went to Toronto for a music festival. We did that. Then we did a Tennessee, like a Memphis, like Graceland trip type thing, some of what we did. I always had those experiences, but I never really thought hard about what it was like to be on the other side of that.
Yeah.
So, probably I guess the time and the stress it takes to plan those things.
Yeah.
And then, I don't want to. I guess I don't want to say that it's been everything I've expected. It's just there's never really felt major in terms of like, wow, I didn't see that coming or this or that. I mean, you get to a certain point in career. I mean, this is 21 years in the book for me. I don't want to say I've seen it all, but I've seen a lot.
Yeah.
And there hasn't really ever been too much to where it's been like, wow, I have just completely floored or flabbergasted by that. Like I said, I guess just the biggest thing I didn't really ever consider was just the amount of time it takes to experience success, within a program and the dedication that, you have to do for that. So I guess it kind of circled back to that. But I wouldn't change it though. I mean, I feel that, what I've done and what I've been able to do with my predecessors, working with Mr. Kenny and what Mr. Thacker and I are building, I really believe it's all worth it, And so the time is worth the investment. And while you don't always see the payoff of it right away, when you stay true to the process, more often than not, the results take care of themselves. So
good things come to those who work for it.
Right.
Type thing.
Do you go bouncing off that a little bit? Do you think that there was more work in the beginning with the transition from you to head director here at the school?
I mean, yeah, that's, one of the hardest things to do is to go in somewhere new.
Yeah.
And then if you're following someone who's light, that's very difficult.
Yeah.
I was lucky that when I took the job at Tiffin, I spent 2 years as the assistant.
Yeah.
So I had a pretty good idea of, what worked and things, how the students felt about things. And then I had an idea of things that I wanted to change that I thought would make the program better. Probably one of the hardest things was, and it really is like, when you go in somewhere new, and this is kind of like, guess let me get on my soapbox for a minute. Let me teach you something here, when you find yourself in a position of leadership, everybody hates change, and especially if you're invested in something, if you're, whether you're working on a team and a job, or if you're a part of a team, when someone comes in and has different ideas, it's difficult to deal with, and so if someone comes in and just completely blows up what people know, you get fallout from that. People jump ship. People are unhappy. So the hardest thing was probably just being small and incremental with your change. There's a saying, if you throw a frog in boiling water, it'll hop right out. But if you put a frog in cold water and slowly turn it up, they'll stay there and boil to death. Don't kill frogs.
Don't do that.
But the human psyche is kind of the same way. If you're just incremental with your change, the gradual change eventually. No one's ever going to always like what you do, but if you're small with it, by the time it's all said and done, you can get what you want, and people are on board with what you get, and hopefully they're starting to experience success from the things that you've changed and things you've done with that. And so that was kind of my mindset when I did those things, and I think that, when it was all said and done, I think the program, continued to grow upon an already proud tradition. And was in a better place than when I got it, and I hope that when my time comes, when I leave and move on to other things, that it can say the same way that I left it in a good place, and that when Mr. Thacker, whoever is going to take over for me when that time comes, that they're have something really good to work with.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure. So kind of getting a little off track here with these questions, but
let's go with it.
Musical influence. What are some people you listen to? What are some things you like to listen to? What gets you going in the morning?
Man, I mean that is probably outside of what was the hardest thing or about teaching. I mean that is probably the hardest question. It's probably easier to say like what I don't like.
Yeah,
because you have a very
I have
like diverse music.
Yes, like I grew up so I'm Generation X and millennial kind of.
Yeah.
And I saw a meme the other day about it that said like we're the most dangerous people in the world. And let me say why, because when I was very young, like elementary school, like it was like pre-Nintendo, like we had Atari and like everything was analog. We had the television where you had rabbit ears. Like I am young enough to remember that, but then I grew up through the first Nintendo and then the first like the first PlayStation and the Xbox and cell phones and and so my musical taste kind of followed that scape. Oh, my wife's calling me. Sorry, honey, I'm on. My musical taste kind of evolved with that. I grew up listening to early 80s rock, so we're talking like Bon Jovi, early Metallica, my Def Leppard, like my dad loved Whitesnake and things like that.
Okay.
But then like working with my dad on the job sites, like we listened to like the oldie station then was like 104.7, so we're talking like Creedence Clearwater Revival and like Leonard Skinner and things like that. So like I kind of had that early rock education. Nobody in my family was a musician.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really have musical influence in the whole classical music world until I got into school and like started doing that. But even then in high school band, we weren't really listening to those things. We were listening, we had traveled to Columbus for the OU marching band concert.
Yeah.
And so like, oh, that's cool. Then my band director was an Ohio State guy. And so watched Ohio State. I started jazz band in high school. Played a little bit. I played flugelhorn. I played bass guitar. Then got put back on trumpet. But even then, I wasn't really listening to jazz. It was, it was probably more stage band.
Yeah.
I remember going to see Maynard Ferguson in Ashland, Ohio, when he still had 2 lungs.
Yeah.
But being there and like, his blasting notes through the back of the auditorium. Yeah. I mean, so like my, I always say if you went into my Pandora or I like Amazon Music or my Spotify. You're going to see rap, you're going to see metal, you're going to see alternative, you're going to see some jazz, you'll see some classical. You won't find country, though.
Oh, yeah.
I just am not, man, and I blame...
I respect that.
Hey, there you go. I blame my parents for that. I remember growing up listening like to the old twangy country, and I hated it. I just hated it.
Yeah.
And, and just have ever since then, just always when someone turns on country, I'll zone it out and do something else. So... But yeah, my musical influences, I love Dave Matthews Band. I love the improvisation goes with that. Yeah. I like cerebral rock. Like I went to Tool last year. I got to see Tool. I think my ears are still ringing from that concert. But I love that. I grew up with alternative rock. Early Nirvana. Old school rap, Notorious B.I.G.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Early. I mean, I had like the first Dr. Dre CD, early Eminem. I mean, like I said, we're dangerous. The whole evolution of like popular rock and hip hop and things like that, I kind of grew with it there. Right. So I enjoy the Beatles as much as I enjoy Beethoven, as much as I enjoy the Beastie Boys, and it's just kind of, they're all their own place, they all have their own time, but I'm a connoisseur of all as long as it's not 20s.
I really resonate with that because like right now on my Spotify, like listen to albums, I've got Young Gravy, which is like
Young Gravy goes crazy.
So out there, and then I've got...
Okay, stop. How do you land on the name Young Gravy?
I mean,
I don't know.
Post Malone came up with his name by putting in a rap name generator, and it came up Post Malone, and he just went with
it. I wonder, and maybe I don't need to know, but how do you land on Gravy? I just like that. But anyway, I'm sorry. Don't even interrupt me.
But
fall the places.
But anyways, I've got Young Gravy on there, and I've got Smashing Pumpkins, Siamese Dream. John Coltrane, Love Supreme. Primus, Sailing on the Sea of Cheese.
Primus, yes.
Funk metal, love it. And then like Metallica, Ride the Lightning, and then like my classical bangers playlist, which is just a bunch of like Renaissance through like Baroque period, just like classical music. It's just like so many different things all in there. And then like, you know, for jazz, like my first experience with jazz was like freshman year. We had, because I went to a bigger high school freshman year in Indiana, we had a jazz 1, a jazz 2, and a jazz combo. And jazz, I was put in jazz 2. I was invited as an 8th grader actually. And yeah, kind of just like, oh, this is cool. This is jazz. This is swing. And that's really all I thought until freshman year. Freshman year, we went to a jazz competition at a local high school. And Wayne Bergeron was there. And that would have been just like your experience with Maynard. Just like plug in your ears. Oh my goodness. Like he played the Incredibles theme. Like it was just a very eye-opening thing. Not only to see someone play jazz, but to play like an instrument that I played. It was really cool to see that. And then I bought my first jazz album. I bought Kind of Blue by Miles Davis. And then I kind of delved into more like combo jazz. And then I expanded out to like stage band jazz with Maynard Ferguson, Buddy Rich, and like just went from there to like some of this more modern contemporary like electric jazz. It's just just so many different things to listen to. It's just I can't really like say like I'm a metalhead or I'm a this, I'm a that. I'm a music enjoyer is what I am.
Well, and I just because it's so much of the stuff sounds the same.
Yeah.
If you're stuck in a genre, I don't know what I would do.
I
really
it's just
don't.
As a metalhead, I would like to say when you listen to almost 10 different subgenres of one, and you hear the same 3. How do I want to word it? Not chorus, but
like kind of chord
you'll hear
progression,
the same
like
riffs.
sound.
the same riff. You can like if you listen like a Metallica. There's a Metallica song and like I hate to say it, but like a Bon Jovi song that sounds similar.
I mean, I have the unpopular opinion, and I'm sorry to say this because you're wearing the shirt.
Oh.
You know, I am not the biggest Metallica fan.
I am.
Like, I will never put anybody down for it.
No.
You know, as I've grown older, I've started to appreciate it less, I guess. You know, but then like I had a college roommate that like just loves Pearl Jam. You know, and I love Pearl Jam. But like I'm of the opinion every Pearl Jam album after 10 just got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse.
I also think that about Pantera. For saying it.
Like, but I think just like all early 80s thrash and power metal. All the same band, different name. Like Megadeth and Metallica, pretty interchangeable.
Yeah.
I will say though, the thing with Metallica and Megadeth though, the riffs do sound very similar, but actually
different. But the bass guitar is really puts it different because
obviously
Cliff was classically trained, so like literally debut album Kill 'Em All, Anesthesia, Pulling Teeth, whole song's a bass solo, and it's just all over that, and it's just subtle things that make them different. But once you've listened to them all, you've listened to them all.
Right.
Like it's
I was gonna say,
it's all the same.
I mean, that's why it's a genre. There's certain characteristics about it that you can paint it metal. This is rock. This is indie rock. This is alternative. This is emo. This is I mean, there's just tons of ways. I listen to emo too. Emo rock. I mean, like I said, because I'm oftentimes looking for something new and different. You know. And so you know, as much as I enjoy the old stuff, and it's good to turn on the old school rap station, this and that, I sometimes want to hear something new.
Right.
So,
For sure.
Yeah.
Like sometimes, as a really big metalhead again, I have a 127-hour playlist of pure metal, and there's some repeats on there. But
is that a movie like 127 hours or something like that?
24 hours.
124. Where he gets like stuck in the
guy gets stuck in
don't
talk about the ending. That's another day. But
you're
not going to tangent anyway. Bring it back.
But I can go in like different sections of my playlist and be like, I want to listen to this section and I want to listen to this, and then today because usually I wear like all black, but today I actually wore some color and I listened to some Suicide Boys and Lil Darky and some more of
colorful things.
Dark trap, but
I mean, it is funny because like my musical taste is kind of seasonal.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I tend to get in a jazz mood, like post Halloween.
Yeah.
Between there and like and Thanksgiving, weather gets colder. I just start yearning more for jazz music, you know. And then like I love holiday jazz, so that you know. throws me into like
time.
Mel Torme and the Cincinnati Pops and Harry Connick Jr. and then even the newer stuff. But yeah, it's like I said, but the variety is a reflection, I think, of me though, because I'm not just the this or that.
Yeah. So I can agree with the seasonal thing as well. When it gets more like cold and gross and dark out, I tend to listen to more of my heavy stuff that I can just like vibe to with the seasons. But like once it gets more bright and airy and I can go outside and enjoy it, I listen more of my light stuff. I can just like put down the windows and bump to.
That, like same thing, seasonal. Some of it though is like current like stuff I'm working on, like not only like just like projects, but like music wise, like during Footloose, I was listening to a lot of 80s, and I was searching out because I was playing tenor sax at the time in the music. I was looking out for a lot of like 80s sax solos, like from songs to like kind of like hear what that tone is like, to kind of like replicate that.
You just want to play Careless Whisper,
and I just want to play like
That's
I just want to be it was just I was just finding inspiration, or like over last summer I found a clarinet at a garage sale. I bought that, and then I like listened to Breakfast in America by Supertramp just over and over and over for that clarinet solo. I was like, oh, that's such a nasty tone, I want it. But like, and a lot of it's like what I'm really working on, or when I really got into jazz, like all I would listen to is Maynard Ferguson and Miles Davis, and
I was a big Dizzy Gillespie.
Dizzy Gillespie. Like I liked later Dizzy, more of the electric era. Like Miles Davis, I don't like the electric era. I like more of his acoustic, like pre-70s stuff. But I liked Dizzy's electric era a little more of the funk stuff, like when he did stuff with like Herbie Hancock.
I like Louis Armstrong, but I tend to go more towards Louis singing.
I like Louis singing more, He was a really good trumpet player. Yes, he wasn't. I just find his voice more interesting because his trumpet playing. There's a lot of trumpet players, but there's only one Louis Armstrong singing, and you can't replicate that.
If you couldn't tell, I'm not super into jazz.
Oh, come on, Evan, jump on in here, man.
Saxophones sound cool. I listen to Kid Rock. He has some saxophone stuff in there. That's the closest I got, dude.
And we've now come full circle.
Kid Rock.
Isn't that the point, though?
Speaking of that, I have a playlist on my phone. It's called Werewolf Roulette, and what it is five. Like I just put 5 of Werewolves of London in there, and then 1 of the Kid Rock song. It has the same piano part as
Cowboy.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Cowboy.
But it's a roulette, so you press shuffle, you press play, and then obviously if you get Kid Rock, you lose.
I like it.
I do too, but it's just fun.
But
So, tangent.
Good conversation.
So coming back to teaching, what are some of your favorite things about, not even just being a band director, but just teaching and being an influence in general?
I love being around. Let's turn off on it.
Yeah.
I love being around kids. I enjoy being a part of the growth process, for kids, being what we do. We start our band kids in 6th grade, and then we see them all the way up, through the time they graduate. So that's really unique, and I really enjoy that. And that's actually one thing I didn't expect. I ended up in a job where we got to start them and see them through, and it's really cool building those relationships, with the students, and then seeing them when they go on and do their things, and whether they go on as a music teacher or they become a policeman or a fireman, it's really an enlightening experience, and it's I think my heart gets a lot from that, and then that's was purpose in the job, and this once again the reassurance of what we do matters, so I really enjoy that. I enjoy that interaction. I work with great people. If I worked with a bunch of not good people, it wouldn't be fun to come here and be that.
Knuckleheads. We can be knuckleheads sometimes, though.
And for the most part, a supportive environment. If there's people, in the higher powers that believe in what we do and support what we do, and then that's important. If you get people to believe in you, that's half the battle. So.
I know, having you and Mr. Kenny, but you for 7 years and Mr. Kenny for 6. That's what influenced me to stick with it. Because, like, going into my high school, like 8th grade to high school, I wasn't sure if I was going to do it. I wasn't sure if I was going to do it this year, honestly. But both my parents were like, just do it, you love it, and I'm so glad I did, because I don't think if I didn't do band or marching band and like concert band, I don't think I myself would want to continue on as a musician. Post high school.
Well, and I think just in general, you know, like committing to something and seeing it through is so important, because you just don't know the experiences you're going to get from it. You know, because I've been in music and involved with it all my life, you know, some of my best experiences in life have come from being in and around music. You know, musical experiences, trips, things, and just the people I've met. You know, and you can get that from being on a baseball team or a football team, you know, and just, you know, encouraging those young 8th graders to like come up and look, give the band an experience, give it a shot in high school. You know, or if you're a football player, you know, look, give it a shot. Take the step to the next level, and if you like it, cool. And if you don't, then hey, at least you tried it.
Yeah, for sure.
You know,
I believe, like what we said with the Ridges, as a choir and as a band, we're not just a bunch of kids who do this. We're also a family.
Yeah. There's
for sure.
You can't be around someone for 6-7 years and not develop a relationship and know those people, and whether you like it or not, there is a family element, because you'll know more about the people around you than maybe some of your distant family members. You know, I mean, and that's really unique. You know, but I think that's also what makes it great. So, yeah.
For sure.
Well, we had a lot of great conversation today. I loved every second of it.
Yeah. Before we end, just want to ask if you have any closing thoughts or statements for anyone, maybe in the 5th grade who didn't try out an instrument but wants to still join in the 6th grade, or someone who's in the 8th grade unsure coming up. Or
it is never too late to try something new. And that means on the band side, you know, we have people in high school decide they want to do it and have great experiences, but that's just life in general. You know, the hardest part of anything is walking through the door, is taking the step and doing that. And I encourage anybody that, you know, if you have some kind of interest, something that you've always wanted to try, something you want to do, you know, explore it and try it, because the worst thing that happens is you don't like it, and at least now you know, and it's a lot. The last thing, you know, you want to do is have the regret of, I wish I would have done that, you know. And so my word of advice is, you know, hey, don't shy away from new experiences as long as they're positive and healthy.
Right.
You know, but don't be afraid to take that chance and try something new, because you never know what you learn about yourself, or you know, what you gain from that. So absolutely.
Sweet.
Well, this has been TC Talks. I'm Evan Kahn.
This is Ryan Clarkson.
And we'll catch you on the next one.
See ya.